Welcome to UFO Talks. I am Roberta Campani, Communications and Outreach at Fair Observer. With me today is Helder Ferreira do Vale, a professor at the Catholic University of Brasilia and a long-standing author at Fair Observer. Today we will be discussing the upcoming Brazilian elections, just in a few weeks. Helder, please tell us how Brazilians are living these days and how they are preparing, or not, for the upcoming elections.
Roberta, thank you for inviting for the interview and for the Fair Observer team for this invitation. Well, we live in polarizing times, right? And Brazil, since 2018, is experiencing this polarization that becomes very, very clear during the elections. And this hasn't changed that much. We have today an extremely polarized electorate and candidates actually surfing on this polarization. So we have extremely divided political spectrum. We have Lula as the incumbent running for a fourth term. And on the other side, we have Flávio Bolsonaro from the Bolsonaro family. After his father has been arrested, he's the one again embracing his father's political ideas and mobilizing the right and extreme right around his campaign. So the scenario hasn't changed much from the elections in 2022 when Lula was elected, and when Bolsonaro, after his Lula's election, tried to stage a coup, right? And has been persecuted and is now arrested.
So you have two candidates, excuse me, Lula, who is running for his third term. Maybe you can explain us, is this possible and how is this legal in Brazil? Is this a peculiarity of your political organization?
Yes, any person can run for presidency in two consecutive terms. So Lula has been in the past in 2003 has been elected, and then he ran for re-election, and then he has been elected for the second time, and then there was a period of 3 terms, presidential terms, and then we returned to politics. Anyway, he was facing corruption charges. He was even arrested, and then we returned to politics. And then he becomes clean for the electoral system and can run for presidency. And he won in 2022. And now he's rerunning for the election. So can run for elections in 2 consecutive terms.
So there is nothing illegal in this?
Absolutely not illegal.
Okay.
Yes. And it's not being disputed by the right. Flávio knows he can run, and one of Flávio's proposals is to end the system and just create 1 term, and that's pretty much legal.
Yeah, that will take a long policy reform, and the whole process, I imagine. So, tell us about Flávio and his political career. Outside of Brazil, we haven't heard much about it. We know he's the first son of Jair Bolsonaro, whom you said just now that he's currently serving prison time. So you said that he's bringing forward his father's politics or plans.
Exactly. So he's part of what we call here the Bolsonaro clan, right? So he became a known figure with the rise of his father in the 2018 election. So he has 3 other brothers, which are very well known. And the four of them are, let's say, extensions of Bolsonaro's rhetoric and also let's say, mobilization campaigns, right? So Flávio has been elected as a senator in the past. He's been, in order to run for this election, he had to resign his post, and in order to run. And there is his older brother is facing charges as being part in helping his father, and so he left to the United States of America. So he is in the U.S. and he cannot come back to Brazil. If he comes back, he'll be arrested.
Okay.
And the best known figure among the Bolsonaro clan is Flávio. Mm-hmm. And there are doubts if he was the best representative of the clan. So in the pre-campaign, before the registry for the presidency was open, there were questions if he was the best representative. A very important potential candidate would be Bolsonaro's wife, right? Mm-hmm. And Michelle Bolsonaro. But then there was quite a dispute, a public dispute between them. And given, let's say, the political inclinations and the entire rhetoric against women, she was kind of sidelined in this pre-campaign, and he became the most visible and apparently the strongest candidate to run against Lula. There are doubts about this. She's very charismatic. Also, Bolsonaro doesn't. The family among the electorate doesn't fare very well among women. They have difficulty reaching, gathering or support from women. So she actually could have been, in my opinion, a stronger candidate than him. And plus, he has a lot of other issues. I mean, he's not very articulate. He's very conflictive. There are a lot of issues with him that we will see what will happen during the campaign.
Okay, so the campaign has been going on for a while. I've been checking the polls, and I've seen that Lula is leading for a few percentage. Now, if I understand right, to win, the candidate has to have more than 50% of the votes, or they run a second round, right? So tell us a bit about the opponent, the incumbent president, Lula. How is he organizing to fight Flávio? What is he doing right now?
Yes, it's Lula is in let's say, in a more comfortable position from the last time he ran, right, which was 2022. Mm-hmm. Well, as an incumbent, he has a lot of visibility, which some think it's a strength, right? And in fact, he is unlike Flávio, who faces vote segmentation from other right-wing candidates. Lula is the sole representative of the left. So this voter fragmentation, Lula is not a problem for Lula, right? However, there are other issues for Lula. Lula has a very high rejection rate, right? Which varies from around 45 to 48%, which is the highest rejection rate, which pretty much means his margin of attracting new voters is very, very small, right? And since there is no fragmentation in the first round, he is in a very good position, right? Since the other candidate, Flávio, faces, let's say, within right competition. However, he is, the polls suggest that in the first round, Lula is far ahead. However, he will most likely face a second round, right? And in the second round, the scenario changes. So just to give you an idea, to talk about actual numbers, it's difficult because the polls varies quite a lot among them. However, they showed a 4 to 6% advantage of Lula versus Flavio in the first round. When you go to the second round, there is a technical tie. So most of the campaigns situate Lula around 45% of the vote in the second round against 44 of Flavio. So what you have is a very similar scenario of the 2022 elections, in which Lula run with a rather comfortable margin in the first round, but then it's much more competitive in the second round.
Okay, so Lula has no other leader within the left. There is no one else. How did it come to be this situation, or what happened? Because he's he's not young. He's 80, right?
Yes, correct.
So, and I've heard Flavio saying things, not really nice things, about him sounding like an old car or something like that.
Yes.
But, okay, he sounds articulate and clear in his discourse, so better than other leaders around the world of his age or thereabout. But what is it with this? Why is it that in his camp, in the PT or the left in general, there aren't other prominent leaders?
Yes, very good question, Roberta. And this to answer to provide a good answer, we have to go to the structures of Brazilian political elites, right? And a lot of observers and analysts coincide that there is a strategy behind this. Lula has been pursuing a strategy of sidelining, right, other left-wing parties and dominating the left-wing political spectrum for years and years. And there are a lot of ways you can approach this. You can look at Brazilian politics as very similar to what was Italian politics in the 80s and 90s as a gerontocracy, right? Yeah. The longer you are in politics, you have a greater advantage. And indeed, Lula has been one of the main political left-wing leaders since the transition to democracy. So he had this advantage, right? Then has to do, another explanation has to do with the party system in Brazil. We have a very fragmented party system, right? And a lot of them have regional strongholds. And then the Workers' Party is one of these parties that emerge with the transition to democracy, that has been very, very good at creating a national base, at running not only at local elections, right, but at the state level elections and the national elections, meaning presidency.
So what would you mean the workers' movement?
Well, it's quite an interesting question, right? I mean, Brazil is no different from other countries in the world in which unionization is being declining. There is new types of movements, right, beyond workers' mobilization. And the PT was the Workers' Party, which Lula belongs, has been quite flexible in its strategy, right? For instance, just to give an example, it was a Workers' Party with the support of some segments of the middle class in the 80s, but then it has, and with a strong base in São Paulo, which is the biggest electoral college and the richest state in Brazil. But then today, its voters and its strength is not in São Paulo anymore. It's in the Northeast, which is the poorest region of Brazil.
Okay.
And has, even during the very first Lula's term in 2003, it has been able to attract middle class voters, right? And it's a very adaptable, a chameleonic party, and that's why it has been able to survive and being very attractive to left-wing voters.
So it denotes some flexibility in this party, but as you said, there is still fragmentation. And how is it on the conservative side or the right?
Well, yes, the conservative side, as I said, Brazil has a huge number of parties in parliament, and the conservative side is also very strategic. But unlike the Workers' Party, who has been pretty much working with the electorate, a political agenda, an adaptive political agenda, the right-wing parties, you can say in general, for most of its parts, has been very pragmatic, right? So several of these parties, we can pretty much there are a lot of ways in which you can understand Brazilian parties, but I think the easiest way is to divide them between clientelistic parties, those that it has a very strong local base, doesn't have a very clear political agenda, right? And politicians run in order to win a position, and then let's see what happens. No electoral agenda, no clear political strategy, except to remain in power. And the other hand, you have the programmatic parties, which the worker parties, one of them, run on an agenda. And so the right wing is that kind of clientelistic, pragmatic party. And then they have a lot of strength in parliament to have a presidential system. However, the parliament has acquired quite important fiscal powers. So they are very good in pressurizing Lula, in this case, the president, in doing what they want. Otherwise, they won't approve the budget, right? So that's pretty much what is the game. And these right-wing parties, they pretty much dominate the National Congress. So if you have the president of the Senate and the president of the lower house, they belong to these parties. And they're so pragmatic, just to give you an idea, that last week, the lower house, the president of the lower house, which belongs to one of these right-wing parties, declared support for Lula and not for Flávio, right? So he's pretty much... Is
this like legal?
It is legal.
Well, they have to be, I don't know, collegial when they join the chambers or the parliament and...
Well, no, it is legal, and indeed, this is the one of the problems of Brazilian politics, and that's why it's so fragmented. Politicians can easily change sides; they can have new affiliation, create new affiliations to new parties. They can create new parties. So this is legal, right?
This should allow for flexibility.
Yes.
And to adapt to the people's needs, but maybe their worry is not necessarily the people. So now I would like to come to and let you do the transition from how this system, the Brazilian institutional politics system works, which you said is very flexible and there are changes, but it's still quite polarizing, especially in the last few years. What are the influences, if there are, from abroad?
Yes, that's a very interesting question. As if any of us has been studying international relations, And we learned from mainly American literature that foreign policy has very little impact on national political campaigns. I think this is changing a little bit, right? And in fact, one of the current tensions that we're facing, and there are debates whether it favors Lula or Flavio, for instance, has been the U.S. role in Latin America. As we know, the Trump administration is indeed thinking that Latin America is its backyard, right? And wants to implement policies, more aggressive policies that indeed show that this is the case. So we have from Venezuela to Argentina, the very close relationship, a very close relationship between Trump administration and the right-wing countries, right? Yeah. And what you do have here is, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, is that Flavio's brother is in the U.S., yes, right? And pretty much what they're articulating is that Brazil will have Trump support if Flavio wins, right? Yeah. And Brazil is currently facing a lot of pressure from the U.S. Regarding Lula's policy. For instance, Brazil is recently faced a 30% approximately tariff increase due to unfair trade, right? It's very recent. And there is also a major issue with the appointment of the U.S. ambassador in Brazil. There is the U.S. Senate nominated a senator, which Brazil has said that will not grant him a visa before the elections, right? And last week, the U.S. Government has canceled the visa of the current Brazilian ambassador in Washington, D.C.
Sounds like child play.
Exactly, pretty much like this, and quite unconventional, right?
Yes,
in a diplomatic setting. Mm-hmm. So, what Brazil, the Lula government is afraid of is that the integrity of the election result will be questioned by the U.S. And by allowing a U.S. ambassador that is very aligned with Trump politics, this result will be questioned, and that's what is the U.S. involvement in the Brazilian election is linked to the integrity of the electoral process and its results.
So you think the integrity of the electoral process is in danger because of the U.S. meddling, the current U.S. administration?
I don't. It's a rhetorical worry. I think the Brazilian system is it's quite efficient, transparent. It is. I don't think there are real issues with it. However, the right-wing rhetoric is because Brazil has an electronic voting. It has been questioned as being untransparent, and that's one of the issues that was consistently raised by Bolsonaro in the past, right? Questioning the electoral results and questioning the electoral system, right? And it has been one of the charges that he faced is precisely that the questioning of this electoral integrity. And so right now, the Supreme Court, the electoral authorities are being extremely cautious in engaging with international observers and the general public and civil society organization to explain the process, right? Extremely clear in a very didactic way, so that the legitimacy of the system won't be in question.
Yes, that's very important. So how is the campaign going? What are the candidates and the people and maybe their bases doing now, running up in the next few weeks? What's going to happen?
Yes. So the campaign officially opened. Started on Sunday with the two main candidates going to their base. So the base of Flávio and Bolsonaro is Rio de Janeiro. So he went to Rio, to Copacabana Beach to start his campaign. And Lula, on the other hand, went to the birthplace of the Workers' Party, which, as I mentioned earlier, is São Paulo, right? And Lula's strategy is to connect with its roots in São Paulo, the workers, right? The periphery, the peripheral cities of São Paulo, where the heavy industry is located. And Bolsonaro tried to mimic his father's early steps when he started. They all candidates. Their legislative offices. They were elected officials from the state of Rio de Janeiro. So they started from their base. The other candidates, especially the right-wing parties, there were three important ones, which have around 3 to 4% of the vote intention. They went to the respective electoral base. We haven't talked about them, and I briefly mentioned them. One of them represents the agricultural sector, right, which has become very strong in Brazil, and it's very conservative. And
whose name?
Excuse me. His name is Caiado. And his strong base is in the state of Goiás, where pretty much where Brasilia is located, within the federal district within this state. So it represents let's say the agricultural lobby. And there are two others. One comes from the state of Minas Gerais, which is a very important state in Brazil. It's the thermometer of what is happening in Brazil, right? So pretty much what you say is that Minas Gerais is a big state. It's the third biggest electoral college, but it's has parts of it is in the north, borders northeastern states where Lula has a strong base, and the states such as São Paulo. So it's a very good thermometer of how the electorate is going to vote in this election. And there is one candidate who's Zema, and he was the governor of that state, and he represents pretty much, again, this conservative base, right? And there is a third candidate which belongs to this movement, right-wing movement, which was very important back in the 2014, 2018, to the rise of the right in Brazil, right? So that's pretty much how it started, the campaign.
So there is Caiado, who represents the agricultural base, and in Goiás. Yes. And then there is Zema in Minas Gerais, right?
Yes.
And who's the third?
It's Marcel, and he represents this movement of right-wing voters who mobilized against Dilma Rousseff back in 2014.
Okay.
And pretty much they each have 3%, 2 to 4% of the vote intention, and the expectation is that the electoral campaign has started, unless there are major events, right? We won't change that much, this vote percentage.
Could they be joining forces with Flávio and supporting him?
Yes, only in the second round, and that's why this margin and the difference between Lula and Flávio diminishes considerably in the second round, is because he will get, there is the voters will be transferred to Flávio.
So let's go. Let's change a little bit the focus. Brazil is very well known because it has an immense reserve of resources, natural resources, and not only cattle, also minerals, wood, and agricultural produce. How are these two main candidates supporting let's say, ecology and the well-being of the planet? Are they, in a way? And if they are, and how? Because, interest, not only in Europe, everything is burning, but everywhere.
Yes.
So interest is growing.
Yes, and in order to understand these two candidates, how they stand in relations to environmental governance, global environmental governance, we have to go back to their political orientation. Lula has a more clear political agenda, as I mentioned before, and Flavio has a very rhetorical political agenda, not necessarily implementable in most cases. Brazil has both candidates will, whether it's right wing or left wing, will have to negotiate with the agricultural lobby in Brazil, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is multifaceted, as I'm going to tell you very soon. But any candidate who wins will have to closely work with this very powerful, politically powerful, socially powerful, and economically powerful sector, right? So agriculture is the sustainability of agriculture is the main concern, and Brazil has been able to become a major player in the food regime as by investing in technology. So have generic seeds, we're being quite competitive. And one of the issues is how this competitiveness can be affected by climate policies, right? And what is and that's the main issue that will guide any candidate that will win. I don't think there will be major difference between them. There is a very articulate agricultural lobby in the National Congress. There is even what you call the agricultural caucus, which is able to push an agenda, right? And
sorry, I didn't catch the name. Agricultural
caucus, agricultural coalition, right? Of parliamentarians.
Okay,
of parliamentarians, or you can say agricultural front. There are many ways in which you can name them. So they always, whether it's right wing president or left wing, a minister of agriculture most likely have the support of this group, right? So that is very well established. However, the let's say publicity of the issue will be different, whether Flávio wins or Lula wins. We have a very well-known minister with Marina da Silva, who has been an activist in the past, and she's very much who was part of Lula, first Lula government, and was also again an environmental minister in this term, and she will most likely give even greater visibility to environmental issues. It's extremely important for Brazil. Brazil has been building a name internationally on the environmental issue. Lula is very active. We've hosted the last COP, right, on environmental issues. Brazil has a very active biodiesel program based on ethanol, which is very important. So
yes. So is this? It replaces fuel, right? It replaces oil.
Yes, pretty much the idea is that ethanol as an alternative to conventional fuel, right? Fossil fuel. And Brazil is being investing a lot on this, has a lot of incentives for the production of this ethanol. Brazil has long invested since the 1970s on ethanol, right? It's a major producer and exporter of biofuel, and it's related with the sugar industry, right? Which is also a very powerful industry within this agricultural front. So this is so I don't think things will change that much. Brazil has targets, will fulfill its targets. Brazil has a biofuel industry, which it's on the rise. What will change is the rhetoric behind it, whether Flávio wins or Lula wins. There are other minor issues, which is actually not minor. It could become bigger, which is the agrotoxics, right? For instance, Bolsonaro has become was a president who deregulated the import of agricultural products to increase productivity, right? So agrotoxics became one of his liberalization of this agrotoxics became one of his important flags, right, during his administration. So there are, I would say, yes, it would be mainly rhetorical.
Well, rhetorical in a way, but at the time when Jair Bolsonaro was president, there were very many hungry people, as I remember well. There were titles talking about the bone lines, people buying bones, in a country that is one of the biggest exporter of cattle and beef for consumption, for human consumption. So how did that happen, and could that happen again?
Yes, what happened with which probably the event that we're talking about is related with his policies regarding indigenous populations in Brazil, especially during the pandemic, which he systematically pretty much overlooked this vulnerable ethnic group in Brazil. And this is not very likely, I think, to happen. It's very difficult to predict, right? Flávio has toned down his rhetoric initially. Let's see what's going to happen during the campaign. As I mentioned, it's going to be a very competitive election. Whoever will win in the second probably will go to the second round, and whoever will win by a small margin of votes. So every vote is important, right? Flávio Bolsonaro needs to enter in order to win, to attract voters that are not as radical as his base. So he needs to tone down and to, for instance, gender policies, which Brazil has a very, let's say, a very favorable policy towards women, against women domestic violence and so on. This time it seems that he's going to not to fight that much against these policies, right? So what we have here is a more mild tone in regards to social policies, for instance. So and a lot, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of these issues are the distribution of the budget is decided in the National Congress, right? And we have, despite having the Congress being dominated by right-wing parties, they are parties who actually do not want big scandals, do not want huge transformations. So continuity is more likely to be the rule of the game. So just to give an example, the public assistance cash transfer program, which started in 2003 under Lula, has remained in place despite, for instance, Bolsonaro winning the election, he tried to change it, but he maintained it, right? So,
Yes.
and I think this Flavio will, if he wins, he won't change much the social
Or
systems.
not right away.
Yes,
Not
exactly.
too quickly.
Not quickly. Yes, not too quickly. Could be that
Also,
way as well.
so I also heard that the health system, the public health system, is extremely good in Brazil.
Well, during the
Is
I
it
would say,
part of those policies like the cash transfer and public assistance? Was it developed at the same time, or how
well,
did it?
yes, the public health. I mean, the social assistance program was developed as a federal program in 2003. It started a little bit earlier with smaller programs under Cardoso presidency.
Okay.
The health system, it's actually the current health system has been engineered during the transition to democracy, right? And is
No,
known.
earlier than Cardoso.
Yes. So we're talking about the 1980s here, and it's known for being extremely decentralized system, right? Brazil is a federal system in which health has been decentralized from the very early from the early periods of the transition. So in the 1988 constitution has very clear distribution of competencies to municipalities and states. And it is a system that has shown a lot of resilience to national and even state and municipal changes, right? And has to do a lot with the public health workers, right?
Yes.
Who mobilize and in favor of a yearly national plan. And we can it's indeed has complexities, right? And which I don't want to go too much into detail, but Brazil also has benefited from very good, in my opinion, health ministers in the past. Brazil has been very good in implementing HIV/AIDS. HIV/AIDS program has become an example. So today we have one of the biggest free HIV/AIDS program in prevention and treatment in the world, right? So it is public and it's free, has some deficiencies, especially in terms of territorial deficiencies. It's very unequal across the Brazilian territory, right? It has become, let's say, funny enough, in my opinion, during the COVID, has become has had a lot of negative yet positive publicity. But what the system has become better known after, during, and after the COVID, and indeed, it has a very positive. Brazilians have a very positive opinion, which has not about the system, and which has not always been the case.
So it won't be too influenced by the outcome of these elections.
No, most likely it won't be. So, I mean, you can explain this in a lot of ways, but Brazil has a huge bureaucratic apparatus, and which, regardless who comes to power, this administrative system will be in place.
So this could be an explanation, maybe, to the fact that even if in famous 8th of January 2023 there has been a tentative coup, institutions survived and remain strong.
Exactly. So there is a perception that things can happen, events can happen, yet there is a layer of continuity, a layer which is an institutional layer, right? Which will provide a trajectory to continuity. And there are a lot of ways it seems to be a public perception. And also, another way we can explain this is Brazil has a lot of veto institutions that veto radical changes. So that's another way to explain it.
Yeah, that's great. I think we can end here with a positive outlook. So even if the other camp wins, whichever camp wins, there won't be great changes, or not in the near future.
Yes, I mean, yes, precisely. I think I am I'm positive about the outlook. I think there were signs, despite polarization, that things are changing, and I want to give a little bit of data here. 51% of the voters, according to opinion polls, suggest that they could change their mind in the next month and a half. In 2022, this the possibility of change was much smaller. Only 32% said they could change their mind during the first round. So I think people are more are starting to become more flexible, and despite there are a lot of issues which I didn't talk much about, but I just want to mention briefly. Brazilians are heavily in debt, right? And so the
individuals and the families are in debt.
Yes. Okay. They're in debt. So the disposable income at the end of the month seems to be able to buy less and less. So there are real economic concerns, and according to polls, also the violence is the biggest concern, which 33% of the electorate seems to be concerned with public violence. Which neither Lula nor Bolsonaro solved it. So also
they didn't solve it, but it seems they have very different approaches toward public violence.
Yes, they have very different proposals. But I think what people are saying are seeing is there is very structural elements that cannot be easily resolved by any government. So Bolsonaro has done, Flávio has still he persists on violence, yet it's not quite as important it was in 2018. Okay. And there are the second biggest issue for Brazilians is the economy. They are seeing that despite the country has grown around 3% on average over the past 4 years, they still face economic hardships, even middle class.
Yes. Well, maybe we can meet another time and have another conversation about more specific issues and factors that affect Brazilian people and society. But I thank you very much. This conversation was very interesting.
Yes.
Soon.
Thank you. Thank you again for the invitation. I hope to see you in another opportunity.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.